curtain wall is a kind of wall that's usually made up of different panels as well as mullions. And these panels, in many cases, are made out of a glass-looking material. With this building, we're going to have a curtain wall that goes around the perimeter of our building, as well as a couple of interior curtain walls that will better define some of these interior spaces. To begin drawing these curtain walls in, we'll once again use the Wall command from underneath the Architecture tab. Pick on the picture of the wall. On the Type Selector list, underneath Curtain Wall, make sure that Storefront is selected. For height, since we're going around the outside first, make sure this goes up to level 5. That'll be the actual height. And there's also an option here called Offset. Type in 2 feet for the offset. Once you've done that, where this grid line A crosses over this wall, you'll see it comes to a little X. Click, and then move over toward your right-hand side. Zoom in a bit. Click at the intersection of these two grids, which is also the center of the column, and we can start to see this is the curtain wall, and here are the different mullions and individual panes of glass that make up this curtain wall system. Now, click again at the intersection of these two structural grids. At 1 and C, where those two cross each other, click. Come back out again, where 1 and A cross each other. I'm going to have you click. And then right here, where this line crosses over this line here that makes up the wall, click again. By doing that, we've now placed a curtain wall all the way around the perimeter of our building. By setting the 2-foot offset, instead of drawing that curtain wall right along this line, it offset it 2 feet in this direction so that it would be around the perimeter, but still falling around these grid lines. If we zoom back out again, I want to put another one right in this location and yet another one in this location here. So zoom back in. Execute the Wall command. Make sure Storefront is checked. Set that offset distance once again to be 2 feet. As far as the height, have this just go up to level 2. We don't need it to go up as high because it's only going to apply to this floor. Pick the intersection of these two lines, and then pick the intersection of that. And hit escape a couple of times to get out of the command. Now we can always use our modification tools later to clean up this so that this will come over to this wall and so that these two will come together at an intersection. Now do the exact same thing over here. Use the Wall command, make sure that this is level 2, set an offset distance of 2 feet, and then draw from the intersection of that wall in the line and this wall in the line. And then hit escape a couple of times to once again get out of the command. Now to get a better look at what it is that we've drawn up to this point, select on Default 3D View. And now you can see the curtain wall surrounding the outside of the building. And if you hold the Shift key down on your keyboard, as well as hold the wheel down at the same time, you can then rotate this around and be able to see the curtain wall on the inside as well. One final thing, if we move down here to the bottom of the screen and on Visual Style where it says Hidden Line, change this to Shaded, we'll be able to see the color of these individual panels that make up our curtain wall system. So curtain walls are drawn in much the same way as a regular wall. Just execute the Wall command and then choose the appropriate curtain wall off of the list and then pick each point that you'd like that curtain wall to be drawn in at, as well as setting the different options related to how high you want that curtain wall to be. If you need to make a copy of a wall an exact distance away from another wall, you can do that by using a command called Offset. Now to execute that command, let's take a look at these two walls that are close to each other here in our drawing. What I'd like to do is make a copy of this wall here and copy it over to the right-hand side to make a similar space as to what we see over here on the left-hand side. And ultimately, these are going to be two different restrooms. So to do that, move your mouse over here and then select on this wall. When you do that, you'll have your modified tools available to you here on the ribbon. After that, move up and then select on the Offset command. Click on Offset, We're going to select a numerical distance, and it's going to be offset a certain distance away from this wall. Now, I do want it to be offset 8 feet. But there's one thing to consider. It's not really getting offset by just 8 feet. In order to do that, I also have to compensate for whatever the width of the wall is. And in this case, this wall is 4 7/8 inches thick. So I need to add that to my dimension. So up here in the offset, I'm going to type in 8 foot. I'm going to put a space in, 4, another space in, 7/8. By doing this, it's going to offset this wall 8 feet, 4 7/8 inches in the direction I specify. Move your mouse into this area, highlight on the wall, make sure that the dashed line shows up over on the right-hand side, and then click at that point. Now this is exactly 8 feet away. Actually, from the face of this wall to the face of this wall, exactly 8 feet. If we want to take a look at that, we can. Hit escape a couple times on the keyboard, select on one of your walls, it actually doesn't matter which one you select, come up here, and then choose on Measure Between Two References. Click the face of this wall, then click the face of the other wall, and you'll see that it's 8 feet in between them. The trick is to first select the wall that you want to offset. Then give it the length or the distance you want to offset it away from the other wall, and also take into consideration if you want that specific distance between the two walls, that distance plus the thickness will equal the total distance that needs to be offset to give you that interior dimension. The trim command allows two walls to come together at a common intersection. To see that, let's zoom in here to where we have column grid 2 and column grid B crossing each other. I'd like to have this wall and then this curtain wall to come together at a common intersection. To do that, I'm going to begin by selecting on the wall itself. After the wall's been highlighted, take a look up here on the ribbon. And there are technically 3 different commands which are considered the trim command. The first one, and the one that's really probably the most common, is trim extend the corner, where you select on one wall, select on another wall, and they both come together at a corner. We're going to try that with this particular wall, and I'm going to tell you right now that it's not going to work quite right. And that's okay, but I wanted to show you what the effect is going to be. So, select here on the trim extend corner, click on this wall, click on the line there that makes up the curtain wall, and it looks like it's going to bring them to a corner. But as you can see, they're hitting each other and not really cleaning up the way that you'd like them to clean up on one another. The reason is that one of these is a curtain wall and the other is a basic wall. Now, if this had been 2 curtain walls, they would have cleaned up on each other just fine. If these had been 2 basic walls, they also would have cleaned up on each other just fine. And when I use the term clean up, it means that when the 2 walls would touch each other, they'll have a nice, smooth material transition in between the 2 of them, as opposed to what we have here, where they just hit each other. So to undo this, I'm going to hit escape a couple times on the keyboard, come up here to the undo command, and click the undo arrow. Now they've been pulled back apart again. Select once more on this wall, and there's 2 other kinds of trims that we could try instead. These 2 in fact work almost identical to one another, except trim extend multiple allows you to do more than one, and this first one just does it once. Let's use this trim extend single element. So click on that, move down here, and down here you'll be able to see it says select a reference as the trim extend boundary. What it wants us to do is select on the face, in this case, of this mullion. Now click the end point of this wall. When you do that, it's now brought this wall down, so it's now perfectly in line where the edge of this mullion is at. Now let's do the same command again. We'll want to select on this face, and then bring this over so that it lines up here at the intersection. So there's 2 different, or technically 3 different types of trim commands that are available to us. The first one, which is trim extend the corner, on regular walls, such as these 2 basic wall types over here, it'll bring them together and bring them to a perfect corner and have no material problems. They'll just clean up on one another like this. In certain conditions, though, you may need to use trim extend single element. By using that, you can bring one wall down and line it up with another wall. By using that command twice, you can then bring them together. The third option, which was trim extend multiple elements, would have been if we had had 3 or 4 walls we wanted to bring up and have go flush against the face of this wall. We could have picked this wall first and then picked each of the walls we wanted to stretch themselves out and then hit the face of this wall, and it would have worked with multiple walls instead of just the one wall. The split wall tool is used when you need to split a wall into multiple different pieces. In this example, let's zoom into this room right here between your column grids 3 and 4. What I'd like to do is split this wall up into multiple pieces. To begin doing that, we need to first select on the wall, then come up to the Split Element tool up here on the ribbon. Click on Split Element, and the most important thing is this box over here, and it's called Delete Inner Segment. If we have Delete Inner Segment checkmarked, what it will do, and you'll see this little X-Acto knife blade saying I'm going to split wherever this blade is touching. So click once right about in this location. Because Delete Inner Segment is checked, if you click again, it'll delete the inner segment between the first spot and the second spot that you picked. So this wall is still a full height wall, this is still a full height wall, but there's no wall located in this location anymore. Now the other thing that you could do, and in order to execute this, let's hit Escape on the keyboard a couple of times, come up here to the Undo key, and select Undo twice. The first time removes the second split that we did. The second undo removes the first spot that we clicked on the wall. So select on the wall, come up here to the Split Element tool, and in this case, let's do the second thing that we can do, which is clear out Delete Inner Segment. It'll no longer ask us to click twice to create an opening. In this case, we're only going to click once. Now move your X-Acto knife blade until this one line goes straight up and down, right in that location, right down the center of this wall. When you're there, click. It doesn't look like anything has happened. Now, on some monitors, you might see a line going straight up and down at this point. It just sort of depends on the computer that you're at. Hit Escape a couple times on the keyboard, and one of the things you'll see is if you highlight over the left-hand side and then highlight over the right-hand side, that this wall is now split in half exactly in that location that we just selected at. And by doing this, we can now select on the right-hand side and then hit the Delete key on the keyboard to delete that inner wall segment that was there. So the Split tool allows us to either delete the inner segment between 2 spots that we pick, or by clearing out the check mark for Delete Inner Segment, it'll split a wall up into one half and then another half. When dealing with walls, the Align tool allows us to line up different walls with one another. To see this in action, let's zoom in over here to the left-hand side of our building and then taking a look right about where column grid B is at. What I'd like to do is extend this particular wall over and align it with this wall. To do that, we need to start off by selecting on this particular curtain wall. Now, select on the Align tool. After picking on Align, pick the face of this mullion and then the end point of this curtain wall. And we can see they're now lined up with one another. If we click the little padlock, they'll stay lined up with one another, even if the floor plate should change a little bit, so that maybe this curtain wall would expand out to be a foot further out or foot further in. This wall would also get a little bit longer or a little bit shorter as required. Also, if we zoom back out again, come over to this side of the model, let's go through the same process. Except in this case, I want to bring these walls down to line up with the face of the mullion. Hit Escape a couple times to get out of the command, select on the curtain wall, and then choose Align. Make sure that you have a check mark in multiple alignment. If you do, it means that we can pick this wall and have them both come down. So, highlight on the face of this mullion right here, pick the face of this, and what it'll do is it's going to drop this down so it's in alignment where this blue dashed line is at. Do the same thing over here, and we can see they're now both aligned flush with this wall here. Now, if we hit escape a couple of times, it may look like they're not quite perfectly aligned, but the only reason is that the lines have different thicknesses associated with them. If we want to see this without the line thicknesses getting involved, move up here to the View tab and pick on Thin Lines. And we can see that, in fact, these lines do line up. Now, let's do the same thing over here. What we'd like to do is have the face of this wall line up with the endpoint of this wall right here. So let's go through the same process. Select on one of the walls, come up to Align, pick the face you want to align to, and then pick the face that you want to have aligned to that blue dashed line down there below. And we can see it's now moved it off, and it's now lined up this wall with the endpoint of this wall right here. So the Align tool's job is to line up the face of one object to the face of another object.